Welcome to the Berkshires Gone By, history and folklore about the westernmost and most beautiful county in Massachusetts. I'm your host, Brooke. The staircase-like cascade that is Wahconah Falls is a beautiful sight to behold, especially after a day of rain or during the melt of spring. Its elegant and entrancing beauty has drawn visitors since its discovery by the Native Americans eons ago. It seems that the first European descendant to stumble across it was a man who was out looking for honey. William Cleveland Sr. followed the direction of bees until finally one led him to its hive, which happened to be in a tree beside this dazzling waterfall. William quickly bought up the land and thus the waterfall on it. He now owned about 100 acres. The falls are situated very close to the corners of the towns of Dalton, Hinsdale, and Windsor, which at the time was called Gageboro. He built a gristmill on the north bank of the falls out of rough logs. I can't help but shake my head at this, as settlers just couldn't seem to leave beautiful things alone. Anyway, William also built a dam above the falls, which diverted much of the water away from its natural course, down a flume and over a wheel, which would then turn. This let the falling water power his enterprise. This was the first gristmill in the area, the next closest being south in Pittsfield, a long journey in a time of horse and buggy. Warren Cleveland, a young family member, was upon his horse one evening, heading home from the gristmill, when he was attacked by wolves. He and his horse made it safely home, but from then on he delighted in telling his story over and over to anyone who'd listen. Years later, the property was passed on to William's son in 1772, William Cleveland Jr., and what had to have been little more than a footpath to this location became a cart road. A while more on, the property became the possession of Joseph Talcott, who continued the operation of the mill. But he wasn't as interested in its maintenance and repairs, especially after the freshets of spring that, year after year, washed away parts of the dam, flume, and riverbank. After some time, when repairs became exhausting, the mill was left to rot. As it fell apart, though, the stones of its construction remained, including 3 large millstones used for the grinding of grain. The land was sold a few more times, and then a sawmill was built where the gristmill used to stand, and the old flume rebuilt and extended to power this new mill. This mill did a brisk business for a while, before being destroyed by a flood. It was rebuilt a little further upstream on higher ground, and continued operation for many years afterward. It is, however, gone today, but a sharp eye can still find evidence of these early businesses. Tourism to this beautiful spot was popular during the Victorian era, and, of course, beyond. The site was well known for its splendor, and was thought to be a great place to picnic, a popular way to spend a Victorian day. And though the mills have vanished into the past, the old folk tales about the waterfall itself have not. There are quite a number. One story goes that nearby this waterfall sat a cozy native village. There lived a beautiful woman who was desired by 2 different men. She did indeed love one of them, but did not love the other. However, it was considered improper to simply tell someone no without giving him a chance to prove his worthiness. After some time, she was forced to devise a challenge to stop the cold glares they gave each other, and finally put the matter to rest. She told the men that she would marry the one who could jump from one bank of the river to the other, just above the falls. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out the way she'd hoped. For the man that she was not interested in leapt across the river without a problem. The man that she loved failed, fumbled, and landed in the river. He was then drawn over the waterfall to his death. The maiden, horrified and heartbroken, leapt into the rushing water after him, unwilling to live her life with the one she did not love. Just before she was pulled over the falls, she called the name of the man she hoped to follow into the next world, Wahconah. Another version goes like this. There wasn't one cozy village nearby, but rather two, just close enough to cross paths once in a while, but also close enough to feel like they were stepping on each other's toes. Little insults became larger over time, and after a while the two tribes disliked each other so much that intermarrying was forbidden. Which was unfortunate. When two young natives from these two opposing tribes met by chance one day in the woods. A handsome young man and a beautiful young woman. For a while, they went to the spot over and over to meet and plan a future together. One day, after the young man had pledged his love to her, the young woman went with delight to her father to tell him the wonderful news that she would be married. But her father flew into a rage, swearing that no daughter of his would marry one of their loathsome ranks. He made her swear to never see him again. The young woman left their hut in the night and walked through the woods crying. She loved the young man. They'd made such wonderful plans and dreamed such wonderful dreams together, but her father had ruined it all. But she loved her father as well, loved him with all her heart, just as much, it seemed, as she loved the young man. She could run away with the young man, she supposed, but she couldn't really, because she'd be disobeying her father. Torn in two directions and utterly heartbroken, the young woman found herself standing above the waterfall in the stillness of the moonlit night. And from that spot, she jumped, was dashed on the rocks below, and pulled away by the churning waters. Legend says that her name was Wahconah. Yet another story starts. The young Mohawk named Yonaga, a strapping warrior, was traveling through the area and stopped by the village near the falls to visit. While there, he saw and fell in love with the young, lovely Wahconah. He asked her father for permission to marry her, but she was still very young, and he was quite a bit older, so her father wasn't ready to part with his beloved daughter. He told the young man to please wait until spring, and then he'd let them marry. In the meantime, Wahconah was out in the forest one day, when she was set upon by a bear. When it seemed that she would surely be killed, a young man appeared and saved her. He was an Algonquin named Nausicaa. Though he saved her from harm, he didn't escape without injury, and his bite and claw marks bled so much that he was weak for many days. Wahconah made him up a hiding place nearby, and returned to care for him every chance she could, making sure that he was warm enough and had enough to eat, and also just to talk and keep him company. When he was well enough, and she had convinced him that her village was safe for him to enter, she led Nausicaa home. And there, Nausicaa wasted no time in asking her father if he could marry Wahconah. Her father was endlessly grateful that Nausicaa had saved his daughter, but it was too late. Wahconah had already been promised to Wananga, but Wahconah put her foot down. She didn't want to marry a man she'd hardly even ever seen. She loved Nausicaa. He had saved her life. She'd gotten to know him. Who was Yananga compared to that? Her father felt for her and went to the holy man to ask advice. It was disgraceful for him to go back on a promise of marriage between her daughter and Yananga, but it was true that Nausicaa had really proven himself, and she actually had feelings for him. It was agreed that the only fair thing to do was at least give Yanunga a chance to win her. Though Winona was disgusted by the idea, that was all right, because she and her father soon devised a plan, and a game of chance for the two men. They all waited until early spring, when Yanunga returned, and then the plan was described to everyone the evening before, when the two men and the villagers gathered around a great fire in the center of their longhouse. They were all told that the only thing to be done was to let fate decide Wahconah's future. Only the spirits truly knew what her destiny should be, and so they would be the ones to bring her to the man she was meant to be with. Beneath the waterfall nearby, the water rushed from the pool at a quick pace, and just a little bit beyond, split around a small island. Hardly an island, really, more like a sandbar gathered around a boulder in the river. Either way, it was almost exactly in the center of that river, and the river on either side was of equal depth, speed, and width. The two men would stand on opposite banks, on opposite sides of the island. Wahconah would be seated in the bottom of a canoe, without an oar with which to steer herself, and two men would wade out to the center of the pool and hold the canoe and Wahconah there. When she gave them the order, they would let go. Her canoe would then float toward the island, and the young men. If she passed on the south side of the little island, she would be the wife of Yanunga, and she would step stoically out of the canoe and stand beside her future husband. But if she passed on the north side, she would be the future bride of Nausicaa, and she imagined herself jumping from the canoe into his arms. It was agreed that this would indeed be the plan. The next morning, everyone gathered at the bottom of the falls, and to either side of the little island, as Wahconah's father placed a bundle of furs in the bottom of the canoe for his lovely daughter to sit comfortably upon, as it was still a cold spring day. Yanunga stood on his side of the river from the little island with a grin upon his face, because he had done something in advance. The night before he'd snuck down to the river and piled rocks along the bottom, diverting the flow of water to one side just enough to give him an unfair advantage, and then he made sure to stand on that side. But unfair didn't bother him, so long as he won. Wahconah climbed into the canoe, held steady by the two men, who then waded into the water, bringing it to the center of the pool. Then, when she told them to, they set it free. It rushed forward on the churning water, bobbed and teetered, and seemed to favor the side of Yanunga. But just as Wahconah frowned, the canoe seemed to waver a bit in the water, drift quickly to the other side, and pass by the island on the north, the side of Nausicaa, the one she loved. He ran into the water, and she leapt from the canoe. The two embraced as the villagers began to crowd around them and sing a joyful song. One version holds that it was indeed the fates that chose which side of the island Wahconah's canoe would pass by. However, another continues as Yanunga left the village in defeat, and was never aware that after everyone had left, as Wahconah's father retrieved the canoe from the riverside, he also pulled a pole from a hole in the bottom of the canoe, the one that he and his daughter had devised to hide in that comfortable bundle of furs, the one that Wahconah had secretly used to steer the canoe away from Yanunga by prodding it against the riverbed, and maneuver toward the man of her dreams. Today the falls are still a popular site to spend the day. The waterfall is of course still there, just off of Wahconah Falls Road in Dalton, Massachusetts. There's a well-marked parking lot and a trail to the site, along with places to picnic. There's some trails, and upstream is a modern dam and a pretty little lake called Windsor Reservoir that feeds the falls, where bird watching is prime. And hidden all around, there are still hints of the past, the obscured foundation of a mill, and an arrowhead or two. Thank you for listening. This has been our 1-year anniversary episode, and it's been a great year. I can't wait to see what history we uncover in the next. This has been The Berkshires Gone By. Created, written, directed, and read by myself, Brooke Grenier, and co-produced by Deanna Garner. You can follow us and see old pictures of the Berkshires on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can also find episodes on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and at our website, www.theberkshiresgoneby.com, where you can find more images related to each topic and every episode we've ever made. If you have any ideas, feel free to email us with any. We're always open to suggestions. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. Thanks for listening.